Hey, happy Friday. This week, Google lost an antitrust lawsuit with massive ramifications for the whole tech industry. The company also killed off its Chromecast and then kind of rebooted it. And the Humane AI pin is somehow an even bigger disaster than we thought. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Brilliant. Okay, for my first story of the week, the United States Department of Justice just called Google a monopolist in what could be described as the biggest antitrust lawsuits since Microsoft. A 286-page decision was handed down by a US judge, which concluded that Google abused its dominance for well over a decade and gave the competition no real chance to compete. A big part of the ruling was that Google paid browser makers like Apple and Mozilla, as well as all major Android brands, including Samsung, tens of billions of dollars every year to make Google the default search engine. The judge said that Google is a monopolist and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. And also that, quote, importantly, the court also finds that Google has exercised its monopoly power by charging super competitive prices for general search text ads. That conduct has allowed Google to earn monopoly profits. So they pay to squeeze out the competition, which allows them to have massive market share. That then leads to much better ad placements and much more profitable ad placements because they have huge inventory and way more places to place the ads into, which allows them to gain more per search, which allows them to be able to afford to squeeze out the competition again. That is the cycle that they're alleging here. Now, everyone basically agrees that Google is the best search engine, but the ruling argues that this is in large part because they were able to squeeze out the competition with this tactic. Google even conducted a study in 2020 to see what would happen to its bottom line if it were to significantly reduce the quality of its search, and found that the revenues from search would still be fine. This led to a judge saying that, quote, the fact that Google makes product changes without concern that its users might go elsewhere is something only a firm with monopoly power could do. That's right, Google itself has found that people would probably not switch even if the search result quality got significantly worse. Apple has apparently calculated that it would cost $6 billion annually on top of what it already spends developing search capabilities to run a general search engine like Google, while Google internally estimated $20 billion were needed to reproduce Google's technical infrastructure dedicated to search. So it would be hugely expensive, and of course Apple would earn less because they would have much less market share too. So understandably, Apple chooses to simply not compete. And while we still don't know what the result of these trials will be, one thing that looks very possible is that Google will be forced to stop paying others for being the default search engine, and given that competitors can monetize less well, I guess that would create massive challenges. This would potentially hit device makers, including Android OEMs, many of which rely on Google payments for their razor-thin margins, but also Mozilla, whose entire Firefox product depends on Google paying them $510 million a year to be the default. So ironically, while these changes might help other search engines and maybe even advertisers get lower rates, it might also basically put one of Google's biggest competitors in the browser space out of business. Of course, these remedies are not set in stone yet, and Google will definitely appeal, but for now, this looks like it might create monumental changes across the industry. Okay, for my second story of the week, we have to talk about Chromecast. Google officially killed Chromecast, its streaming dongle, after 11 years and 100 million units sold. The bandwagon to jump on is of course to make fun of yet another product being placed in the Google graveyard, but the real story is more interesting as they also launched a new higher-end device called the Google TV Streamer instead. It is $99, it is coming in September, and as you would expect, it has higher-end specs than the Chromecast did. This includes 4K HDR with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, more internal storage, Ethernet, Matter, Thread, and of course some Gemini-powered natural language search too. So why is Google doing the switch? Well, Google said that the NVIDIA Shield was our gold tier price point as well as gold tier performance, and this is really what it's going to be with our Google TV streamer. Presumably the market is flooded with cheap dongles already, and almost every TV has casting built in too, so I suppose Google wanted to move up market from that. I don't understand why they also had to throw away the very popular Chromecast brand, but that's Google for ya. Okay, and for my third story of the week, the Humane AI pin is somehow even less successful than we thought. A new report from The Verge says that returns are outpacing sales right now. There's only around 7,000 pins still with customers today, and what's really strange is that returns can't be refurbished or resold because of a T-Mobile limitation that means that pins can't be reassigned. This means that all the return units are potentially e-waste. At this point, I wouldn't even really want to make fun of them anymore because it's mostly just sad, but then I also remember the following. Just a few months ago, Humane tried to actually sell itself to HP for $1 billion. At this point, they must have already known how much of a disaster they had on their hands, so I guess they really tried to fake it until they made it. Okay, moving on to our release monitor, we have a short one again, and this one starts with a new Apex edition of the OnePlus Open Foldable. It has a pretty new color, 1 TB of storage, and a special VIP button that weirdly enough cuts off your camera and microphone access for privacy. Okay, I guess. Next, Google also launched the 4th generation of its Nest Learning Thermostat with a complete redesign after about a decade, including a 60% larger display and the price of $280. And finally, Anker launched 6 new high-end charger products that range from docking stations to charging cables. Many of these are gallium nitride powered and they all seem very compact, so those who like high-end chargers might like these. Okay, and for the brief, we start with Bloomberg reporting that Apple will soon launch its smallest computer ever, a Mac Mini made even more mini with an M4 chip, which might even be as small as an Apple TV. Nice! Meanwhile, still with Apple, the company has just launched a really nice idea in its iOS 18 beta called Distraction Control, which will actually allow you to wipe out ads from websites if they bother you as you read or try to screenshot something. The ads do load, so this is not a proper ad blocker, but you can just wipe them away temporarily if you want to concentrate. That's pretty elegant, and I want to see this on Android too. And for our last Apple news, people have dug into Apple Intelligence and discovered files in plain text that set the behavioral prompt for the AI chatbot. These hilariously include things like do not hallucinate and do not make up factual information. Which, man, if that's the solution to AI not hallucinating, you just tell it to not do it, that would be absolutely hilarious. Meanwhile, over at OpenAI, one of the co-founders, John Schulman, has announced that it's leaving the company to join a rival, Anthropic, and thereby joining many of the other defectors from OpenAI's leadership team. Ouch. Next, Disney Plus is getting a lot worse. First, they announced a price hike, making Disney Plus now cost $16 for a basic plan, which is up from $7 at launch, and the company's password sharing crackdown will also properly start in September. Yikes. Then in funny news, athletes at the Olympics were given special edition Samsung Galaxy Z flip phones, and guess what they did with them? Many of them are selling them, of course. And meanwhile, Intel says that its turnaround is on track after all, as its next-gen foundry process nodes called 20A and 18A are on time. If you remember, those are the ones that come after 3 nanometers, and the Panther Lake client processor, which is the first chip made with 18A, is already powered on and booting Windows, yielding well in use inside Intel and ahead of schedule on product qualification milestones. Of course, Intel is absolutely desperate for good PR right now, so we should take all of this with many grains of salt, but they say that the 18A process and chips with it are supposed to be launching in 2025 already, and if they're right, then that would mean that they would actually, theoretically, catch up with TSMC finally. Intel is going through one of the biggest engineering crunches in tech company history, trying to leapfrog the 3, 4, maybe 5-year technological lead that TSMC has, and also burning tens of billions of dollars in the process. At the heart of this transformation are thousands of engineers from top to bottom trying to do the impossible. And if you'd like to become a brilliant engineer yourself, then check out Brilliant. It's an online learning platform that teaches you to think like an engineer or a scientist. They have a ton of STEM courses that cover math, physics, chemistry, computer science, and more. You have whole learning paths that start at beginner levels and will take you all the way to advanced concepts like machine learning, large language models, and more. And all the courses are designed so that the big concepts are broken down into many smaller learnings, and then those are practiced right away with interactive tests to make sure that you practice and fully understand what you've just learned. Not only is this just way more fun than simply reading a book, it's also proven to help you retain the knowledge much better. And if you want a recommendation, I particularly like their courses on how LLMs or large language models work. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/TFC or click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription if you choose to get one. So happy learning, and I'll see you next Friday.